Hi everyone, this is Jim. Welcome to this postmortem of one of my over-the-board games. I played this just yesterday at the local chess club. So a little bit of background, this game was played with a time control of a game in 2 hours with a 5-second delay. So each side gets 2 hours, so the games can last up to 4 hours, plus a little bit for the 5-second delay each move. This is the final round of a tournament, and I was doing pretty well in this tournament. I had scored 3.5 points out of 4, and I was in the lead. There were 5 other players with 3 points out of 4, and so I was paired up against one of those contenders. If I got a win in this game, then I'd be a clear winner of the tournament. If I got a draw, I would be at least sharing first place. And well, if I got a loss, then I would fall behind whoever beat me, and maybe there were other players at 3 who could also move to 4 with a win. So it all comes down to this final game, and I was facing an opponent I played many times before. And for this tournament, let's see, my rating was 1763, and my opponent's rating was 1778. I should say this. In this particular game, I was playing in the lower division at my chess club. They had, for this tournament, set the dividing line at 1800. Sometimes the dividing line is set at 1700, sometimes at 1800. And so this is the first time I've played in the lower section for quite a while, because even though I'd been below 1800 before, those were times when the upper section was still taking players with the rating of 1700 and up. So anyway, so this is why I'm at the top of the tournament board instead of at the bottom of the tournament board. And the whole tournament, although it was successful for me, I hadn't been playing particularly well. I had some lucky wins. Some games I managed to. There was one game I lost a piece and still managed to escape with a draw. So that's pretty lucky. Anyway, so it all comes down to this final game. I'm facing an opponent I played many times before, and I'm pretty familiar with his opening repertoire, and I decided to try something different. And I had done that video recently for my opening basics series about the Richter-Veresov attack, and I said, well, why not give it a go? So this is my first attempt at the Richter-Veresov in an over-the-board game. I should also mention this is my 800th slow time control over-the-board game, so my 800th recorded classical game, rated. My 800th rated classical game. So d4, d5, knight c3, knight f6, and bishop to g5. So this is the starting position of the Richter-Veresov, which you can also get to in the other move order with the knight coming out first and then d5 played. And now my opponent here played e6. I don't know if I even considered this move when I was doing the video. The most common moves here are bishop f5 and knight bd7. I think I looked at examples of those moves, and there are other moves as well, c6 and e6 among them. And e6, I guess, is kind of a natural move. I tried out this opening by playing it some in blitz, and I would occasionally see this in blitz, but I never looked up what I was supposed to do against e6. It turns out the main move here is e4, and there's I did not play this, but let's put it on the board and then talk about this position. There's kind of 2 ways to think about this. One is, with the Richter-Veresov, your knight here, bishop here, you're indirectly or directly putting pressure on those light squares in the center. With the bishop, you're indirectly putting pressure on those squares by pinning this knight or even capturing it, and with this knight, you're directly putting pressure. So e4 is often a strategy in the Richter-Veresov to kind of soften up the center, particularly on the light squares. But there's a second way to look at it, which is this is a transposition. This position actually is a standard position in the French defense. This is the classical variation of the French defense. So the way you get there is e4, e6, d4, d5, knight to c3, and then if black replied bishop to b4, that would be the win-hour French. But black played knight to f6, that's the classical French, and then bishop to g5 is one of the main moves there. So yeah, this is a standard position from the classical French. And so that's a way at this point. So you can think of this move e6 as an offer to transpose into the classical French. And I didn't really think of it that way. I was, like I said, hadn't really looked up this position or thought about it in those terms. And I just, and I thought about the move e4, but I wasn't quite sure if it was ready just yet. So I went ahead and played knight f3. But it turns out, well, my opponent played bishop e7, a very logical follow-up. And now e4 is just out of the question. Well, it's not out of the question, but he can just take it. So, and I don't know if that's particularly good. I guess it's some kind of gambit. So I could, I mean, I guess the reason it's not out of the question is I could take the knight right here and then play e4, which is sometimes the way you play in the Richter-Veresov, but I wasn't quite ready to do that either. So I just continued with e3. And at this point, we are on move 5, and we're just completely out of the opening book. So, well, part of that is going according to plan. I just wanted to get some kind of new position on the board, and so I've been successful in that. Although black is fine here. This should be about an equal position. Let's see, he castled. I went bishop to d3, knight bd7. So we get a lot of normal developing moves, castles, c6. Black could also have considered c5 here, just undermining the center and taking advantage of the fact that my knight is here on c3, and so I can't easily bring a pawn up to defend the center. So it's just another way to play. But c6, good solid move here. And now I decided to go with the typical Richter-Veresov idea of giving up the bishop for the knight. And this gives black an interesting choice, and that's why I played it at this particular moment. So there's two ways that black can recapture. If he takes with the knight, and this is the way, this was one idea of the position. There's actually two different ideas here. If he takes with a knight, which he didn't do, I was planning to play knight e5, and then, well, there's different things black could play, but just to put a move on the board, say queen c7, that was one of the chess engine recommendations, then f4. And now I've got this set up. It's similar to a Pillsbury attack or a Stonewall attack, and I've gotten rid of my dark squared bishop. I have my good bishop. And so I think this position, although it's still, like I said, about equal, I think this is interesting in giving good attacking chances for white. If I need to shore up the center, at some point I can move this knight out of the way and bring this c-pawn into the game. And it's natural to bring this knight over to the king side anyway, somewhere or another. And the other ideas, of course, are to lift the rook and get the queen over and just go for that king side attack. So that would have been interesting. And the other way to take is to take with the bishop. But now with the bishop here, it's possible to get in the move e4 without having him take with the knight. So when we went like this, I played the move e4 immediately. He went bishop f6, I played e4, I took, and he hasn't got any more pieces to trade, and he has to decide if he wants to give up the bishop or not. It is an option just to keep developing and allow me to take the bishop, but well, black decided in kind of a principled way to keep the bishop pair. So this will be maybe a long-term edge for black. If the position opens up, black has the bishop pair. But in the position as it stands, I have compensating advantages. I have more space, and I have actively placed pieces. So this is the kind of position you're looking for from the Richter-Veresov. Let's see, I continued with queen d2. He went h6, so taking control of this square, keeping me from hopping a piece into g5, which was starting to be an idea there. I brought my queen over to e3. I thought maybe some pressure on the e-file might be interesting. If I can line up on the e-file and push forward with c4 and d5, maybe I can get some tactics going that way. And there may be some other maneuvers I could consider over here on the king side. But at this point, there's also the idea of moving this knight with tempo and getting the queen lined up with the bishop for a mating attack along here. I was trying to figure out various ways I might arrange that, or moving the c-pawn, bringing the bishop back here, and the queen over here, lining up for that battery. So anyway, my opponent put an end to that right away with the move f5. And, well, technically this is a mistake. The chess engine starts to like white's position. Up to this point, I think we've been in the range of about even. And the chess engine wants to stay, wants black to just kind of sit on this position. Queen c7 again is the suggestion of the chess engine, but I'm sure there are other moves, and maybe some slow developing plan over on the queen side. Develop the bishop out here to b7 is kind of a way for black to make a little bit of progress, make space for his bishop. I mean, he is in a bit of a logjam here, so black needs to do something, but maybe f5 is a bit weakening on the king side. Anyway, the chess engine starts to prefer white at this point. And, well, I had a neat tactic here that I missed, but here's your chance to look for an interesting tactical move. I don't know, it doesn't actually win material with best play, but it might have been interesting for its shock value. Okay, if you want if you want time to think about this position, go ahead and pause the video right now. I'm going to give the answer away. The move I could have played here was knight to d6, just putting that knight there where it is easily taken. And I had noticed one of the features of this position. After f5, the e-pawn is left undefended. So so knight to d6 is one way to take advantage of it. After the knight goes to d6, if he takes with the bishop, then I have queen takes, check, and I pick up the bishop. So that just wins a pawn. Probably best is to defend here. And then, funny enough, this is another reason why I wanted to show this. The chess engine wants to play knight takes c7. I'm not sure if I would have done that. It's it's very counterintuitive to get rid of that light squared bishop, but maybe that knight had nowhere else to go. And anyway, it likes white in this position, but I don't know. Black has got a good bishop, and black will have to play a few moves to sort out his pieces. Maybe the pressure on the pawn eventually nets something. Like, for example, maybe I can line up here with the rook, and yeah, hard to say. Anyway, yeah, I don't really understand why the chess engine likes that so much, but knight d6 was a cute move there. I was looking, I'd recognize this pawn was loose, and I was looking for some move that I could make with the knight, but I didn't discover anything great, and I ended up just dropping back to d2, which is also good and keeps an advantage for white. But the other move would have been interesting to play. Let's see, he went knight b6 now. This defends the pawn, unblocks the bishop there, so the pawn is defended, and then the knight is threatening to hop into the d5 square. So I played c4 to stop that. I really actually thought for a long time at this point, because I wasn't sure if I wanted this weakening. When I play c4, my d4 pawn becomes weaker, and maybe black gets some counterplay against it. But I decided it was more important to keep the knight out of the d5 square. Let's see, he went bishop f6, targeting my weakened d-pawn. And I went knight e5. So this move is not approved by the chess engine, although I think it worked out okay. Let's see. Well, there's a flaw to that move. So anyway, the chess engine wants to continue with rook a to b1. And I think this is an interesting point. Sometimes I try to play a little too actively, and sometimes I really should just play a little slower. So rook a to b1 is just the idea, I think, to start pushing some pawns forward on the queen side and just getting this rook in a good position. It also, well, if something happens to the d-pawn, it also defends the b-pawn against the bishop. So it has maybe a couple of ideas. So maybe a good all-round move, but not actually a move I thought about. So it's one of those moves that kind of it's kind of a slow move or a strengthening move that I often miss these ideas. I'm looking for active moves all the time. And knight e5, well, there's a flaw to this move, which is that black can play the move c5 here to undermine the knight. Let's see, he didn't actually play this, but after c5, yeah, it's a little bit tricky. I was thinking I would take here, hitting his knight, but, well, he can take my knight, and my queen is overloaded, and my queen has to defend the bishop. There is this lineup of pieces on the d file, which is a bit of a problem. So I can't take his bishop. I have to grab the knight here, and then the bishop can grab on b2, and well, black can stay a pawn up in this position, I think. 1, 2, 3. No, the material is even, but my pawns are looking a little bit scattered. Anyway, this definitely gives up my advantage if he played that way. Anyway, I played knight e5, and he decided to just take it off. So I still keep an edge after this. I take with the queen, and he goes queen to f6. And I could trade queens. I looked at it, but queen e3 is also a good move. In fact, it was slightly preferred over trading. And we can pause here and think about it. This is one of those positions which is I've achieved a lot in the opening, from the opening in the early middle game, and it's mostly of a positional nature. I've got these my opponent's pawns on light squares, and he's got this light squared bishop, and so far he hasn't managed to get in those pawn breaks, although I did give him a chance to play that c5 pawn break, but now it's kind of ruled out. That was one of the ideas of queen e3, is it's keeping an eye on that c5 square, so he can't play c5. So this position is the kind of thing where you should aim for things like this, where you've got this somehow you've accomplished some kind of positional edge, but it's a little bit tricky for me to figure out how to proceed sometimes and to keep that edge. And I do a pretty good job for the next 10 moves, it looks like. So I think I play okay for the next part of the game. Let's see. My opponent goes bishop d7, trying to get that bishop into the game. I go f4, still just keeping a clamp on the position, but also with ideas of bringing the knight or the rook. And, I had to move the f-pawn to bring the rook up and over, and then maybe bring the knight into the game. So that's what I'm trying to arrange. But my opponent has an idea with this bishop maneuver to bring the bishop over and help defend the king side as well. And this turns out to be pretty effective. Let's see, I played rook a e1, piling up on the e-pawn there. He defends with the bishop from f7, so I kind of forced the bishop to commit to one side or the other, and it committed to the king side. I go knight f3, goes knight d7, bringing the knight around and preventing me, or he'll probably trade off if I hop another knight into e5. So I'm stymied for a moment, and I play kind of a quiet move here with queen d2. This is not bad. The other idea I had here was maybe this would be a time to play bishop c2 and queen d3, and then try and play for g4 and open up this diagonal. But I didn't see that leading to a whole lot. So I'm just playing this move to get my queen off of the diagonal, maybe off of the file. Maybe I can double up my rooks on the on the e-file here. And I noticed he'd cleared his back rank, so I figured he was going to bring a rook to the e-file, and I didn't want it to be opposite my queen. Let's see, he tried rook fc8 first, still trying to get in this c5 break. So I went ahead and played c5 right now, and I think this is good. Keeps the knight. The knight, if I had played c5 earlier when the knight was still on b6, then the knight would have just hopped into the d5 square. But now the knight has retreated to d7. C5 is a good way to keep a clamp on the position and to keep the knight. The knight still doesn't have an easy path to get to that square, although it could use the f6 square as a pathway to get to d5. But anyway, this seems to be okay. I could have played that move instead of queen d2 as well. Let's see, he went bishop h5, taking a look at my knight, and I decided to, I didn't want to trade the knight for the bishop particularly. I thought the bishop would be a bad piece in the long run, so I put it on to e5. And, he decided to trade at this point, and then I put a rook. Tick back with the rook, keeping the file open, keeping pressure on the e-pawn, and he played his rook over to e8, so brought the rook back to defend. And so we're still in that space, that part of the game, the early to from just out of the opening through the middle game, where I managed to keep some pressure on and keep some slight edge. And I continue with queen b4. I think this is still good. I had some ideas here, putting some pressure on these pawns. I wanted to induce this move, rook e7, and we'll see why in a second. I played rook fe1, and he brought another piece over to defend the d-pawn, and he played bishop f7, and that actually runs into a tactic. So let's look at ways he can defend. The way I was expecting is rook a to e8. I thought that might be the best move for black. And then the tactic that I got to play in the game doesn't occur. Another way for him to defend, which was interesting and I didn't think of during the game, but it's a nice idea. Rook d7, defend by counterattacking. What's funny is if I take this pawn, you might think that's coming with tempo because it's hitting his queen, but when I take that pawn, his queen can take my pawn because the rook and the queen coordinate on that square, which is only defended by my queen. So, in this structure, I do have to recognize I've got this weakness, and it's also because I have a light squared bishop, that pawn on d4 is not easy to defend, and that's how black could defend. So bishop to f7, though, is a slight mistake, and there is a tactic here. So if you want to pause the video again, see if you can spot the tactic. Okay, I'm going to give the answer away now. The idea is bishop takes f5, and I just played it. The thing is, if he takes with the pawn, his rook is under defended, so I win the rook, and he doesn't want to take with the queen. So that's why in this position defending with the rook is better, because I can't play this trick. The rook is adequately defended at that point. So I was thinking that's probably what he would play. I would still have some edge here, but maybe not a winning edge. After bishop f7, things are looking pretty good for me. So I take, and he played rook a8, and he had spent some time previously before playing bishop f7, so maybe he'd seen this idea and thought that rook to e8 was an adequate defense, because, well, my bishop has to move now, and then his queen can grab the f-pawn, so the material stays even. But there are some issues with the queen taking on f4, and I spotted that, and I calculated ahead. So it's hard to figure. For me, it was hard to figure where to put the bishop, and it turns out there's one bishop move which is much better than any other, and I didn't find the best move for that bishop. But well, if you want to think about this position, where is the best place for me to retreat that bishop to? Okay, well, I'm going to start talking about. I'm going to start with the move I actually played, and we'll come back to this position. So anyway, if you want time to think about it, you can pause the video here and think about it. But the move I actually played is bishop to h3. And, well, you'll see why in the game. He went queen takes f4, and I'd spotted this idea of rook to f1. And I noticed that with my two rooks here, my queen defending this pawn, his queen is short of squares. Where can the queen go? In fact, every square along this diagonal is covered. Rook, queen, rook, rook, rook. And along this diagonal it's all covered. And up and down it's covered. So only right to left moves are available. And so bishop h3 just took away one of the options. It took away that queen g4 option and forced the queen to h4, the only move. And then I played this move queen to d2 with the idea of rook to f4, trapping the queen. And so that's what I had spotted, and that's how the game went. And it doesn't quite work because well, he can defend. He found a defense with bishop to with pawn to g5, and that controls the f4 square. And then I have trouble unwinding from that position. That's why this is not the best spot for the bishop. For example, if I ever want to play the move g3 to kick the queen, he can just take my bishop. So my bishop on h3 is a liability. That's the point I wanted to get to. So let's go back to this position right here where I'm trying to figure out. So I'd calculated ahead, and I'd seen the idea of trapping the queen, or at least harassing it, and I thought that was good and I would go for it. But if I had played bishop to c2, it's actually much more effective. Queen takes f4, rook to f1. And queen can go either to g4 or h4, but doesn't make a whole lot of difference. I can throw in this move g3, and that move is not available when my bishop is here. And the move g3 well, here it comes with a tempo on the queen, but if the queen were on g4, it would still be, if the queen were here instead of there, it would still be a threat, and the threat is just to bring the rook in and trap the queen this way. And this turns out to be very, very difficult for black to meet, and this is a winning position for white. So anyway, I missed a winning chance there. I played bishop h3. Let's see, he took, this is, I showed you before, I hit the queen with my rook, the queen went to h4, and I played queen d2. And now there is actually g5, the move he played, is not the best defense. There's the best defense is kind of another clever move. You can also pause the video here if you want to try and guess the best defense for black. I'm going to give the answer away now. It is rook to d7. So once again, hitting this weak spot in my position, and more importantly, opening up a square for the queen to fly to. The queen can, after rook to f4, the queen can retreat to e7, and rook f4. I was thinking this is not a problem because rook f4 hits the queen and defends the pawn, but rook d7 also prepared a flight square for the queen. So that solves all of black's problems, or at least the game continues. I think there's still some edge to white there. G5 is a bit of a mistake, and I have one more chance to win this game. But at this point, let's see, we're on move 30, and we both used up 75% of our time. Right, we're down to about half an hour each, which is not really low. You can finish a game. You've already played 30 moves in the remaining half an hour, so it's not too much of an excuse, but it affects your thinking. Sometimes you hurry your decisions, and I had noticed when I was trying to calculate ahead, I had noticed this g5 move, and I figured a weakness of the g5 move was that it left this f6 square available to my rook, and I was thinking, well, that's a nice square for the rook. It kind of triangulates with the queen on h6 and prevents him from pushing the g-pawn forward and trapping my bishop. I mean, the one danger here is that I am getting my pieces into a bit of an awkward spot here. I do have to worry about this. Is sometimes how attacks can backfire on you. You get your pieces into what you think are good attacking positions, but sometimes your opponent has some counterplay against them. If they end up awkwardly placed, and that's what looks like what happened with this bishop h3 move. That ended up being awkwardly placed. Instead of, let's see, g5, instead of rook f6, I could have played the move queen to e3. And this actually looks to be winning for white. Let's look at a couple examples. If he tries g4 now, I can play rook to f4. Pinning that pawn and threatening to take it. Let's see, and if he tries to defend with the bishop, I can actually sacrifice here and play h3. Well, it's sort of a temporary sacrifice, get the piece back. Maybe he can defend with the h-pawn there, but this seems to work out with my pieces swarming in. Yeah, it's tough to calculate these things all the way through to the end. That's the other problem when you're in low on time control. Anyway, the chess engine gives the best move for black is king g7, and then rook to e4, hitting the queen, preventing the g-pawn from coming forward. So the queen goes back to h5. Now bishop to g4, kicking the queen again. Queen goes to g6 and h4, and I start to break through against the king here. The chess engine doesn't find any move that's playable over on the king side and starts shifting its attention over here. But now I can put the rook back on e5, pile up on the g-pawn, and it looks like I've got a winning attack here. So that would be my best chance. That would be playing the move queen to e3 right here. And instead I played this move I'd thought about before, rook to f6. And, even before I played this, I had already seen that he has a response that defends, which is king to g7. But I couldn't find anything better, and I went ahead and played it anyway. But I think one mistake here is to if you see a refutation to your move, if you want to play actively, but if you see that your active moves have a refutation, then you should look for other moves. And maybe if I was looking, instead of looking for active moves all the time, I might have found this kind of maneuvering move, Queen E3. It's just a little bit of a strengthening move, right? It's putting a little more pressure on this E file and the pawn on E6. It's still holding on to the D pawn. It's getting the queen up where it's looking at the bishop. It introduces the idea, which I didn't think of during the game, but there are also lines where I can play the move G4 here, as long as the queen is defending the bishop. So it's just kind of improving the position slightly, and the attack continues from there, but you have to find that one move. Okay, so anyway, yeah, I played the active move that doesn't work, and he played King G7, which I thought he would probably play, and then I played my rook back to F3. I calculated this far ahead, and the idea of rook F3 is that if he plays G4, I can actually just take it, because with the rook on the third rank, if he takes back with the queen, then I will skewer the queen and the king. So I've once again saved my bishop over here. Black played the move rook D7 here, and things start to get a little bit difficult for me. So I kind of wanted to keep the rook on the third rank here. So I have this continuing idea of defending against the G4 move. And so I just, and obviously he's attacking the pawn, and I just slid my rook over to D3 holding on to the pawn. But I made that decision a little too quickly. I think it's the time pressure getting to me again. So actually I'm worse after that move. I'm actually probably losing. So the move here, if I had spent a little more time thinking about it, maybe I would have found it, is this G4 move again. As I mentioned, that was maybe an idea earlier. The rook on the third rank defends the bishop. The pawn to G4 stops black from playing G4. Also, black's queen is kind of confined here, and also it defends the D pawn by blocking the queen's view of that pawn. So G4 really holds everything together. Now this is no more than an even position, although it's still complicated, and the game would go on from this point. I don't know, it's hard to see how the queen can get out of there, but maybe I can't make any progress. Yeah, I don't know. It's hard to say what ideas are left in this position. Certainly it's still complicated enough that both sides could mess up, but the chess engine rates this as even. But instead I played the move rook to D3, just simply defending the pawn with the rook and keeping the rook on the third rank, so that the G4 is stopped. And right here my opponent missed his winning chance. He should have played the move bishop to G6, and after bishop G6 there's no way that I can avoid the loss of material. I can give up the exchange directly, or if I move the rook, he's going to break through on D4, but one way or another black is going to pick up material and have a winning advantage. So that was black's chance to win the game. Let's see. Instead, he played the move rook E to D8, and that's how the game continued. And at this point, it's back to even. So, and it's probably going to head for a draw. I don't know if there's any way to avoid it. After rook E to D8, I went ahead. I wanted to. I was tired of worrying about this bishop being trapped over here on H3, so I went ahead and took on E6 because he undefended that, and his idea is that he can take on D4, so it's just a trade. But well, this trade ends up with lots of material coming off, and after queen takes, he offered the draw. So let's see, it might continue, say queen takes, rook takes, bishop takes, king takes, and I have time to bring my rook back here to defend. I don't know, it's still a little bit tricky. Black might have some edge. His pawns are all together, and his king is close enough to these pawns, whereas I have this one pawn which is a little bit advanced. Black could try to play on for some kind of advantage in this endgame, but should be a draw technically. Anyway, when he offered the draw in this position, I accepted, And well, I guess considering the course of the game, it's probably a fair result. I had a lot of pressure in the middle part of the game, I felt, but I wasn't able to convert it. And then there was that exchange of blunders near the end where he had a winning chance and I had a winning chance. So we both had winning chances and missed them. So I guess a draw is a fair result. Anyway, it was a very interesting game. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and I will see you again soon.